Our today's speaker is Dr. Nicholas Wachira from Al Khan University Institute for Educational Development, East Africa. Dr. Wachira is a faculty member and he has interest in educational leadership and management and design thinking approaches to education. Interest in leadership and management have led him to begin thinking, analyzing, and disseminating knowledge about issues of inclusivity in education as both a practitioner and a researcher. Wachira has been a teacher, a school principal, and a university academic for the longer part of his career. And today, Dr. Wachira will share his experiences on inclusivity in online teaching and learning, examining the black box. So welcome, Wachira, and
Thank you, Azra, and welcome to everybody. This session is really about looking at inclusivity as part of a wider concept of student engagement within the experiences that we have had with online teaching and learning. I'm going to base my experiences specifically to IED East Africa, and I just want to begin by acknowledging the fact that this is part of a wider study that me and my colleagues at IED East Africa are engaging in order to learn lessons from our experiences with online learning. So without any further ado, I want to begin by giving you just a brief background about, inclusivity. So inclusivity is really about a wider concept of student engagement. Student engagement is important because it has a significant impact on student outcomes. I also want to bring on board an understanding that inclusivity is not a singular concept, but is multidimensional and will be defined differently depending on the different contexts. I also want to bring on board the fact that when we talk about inclusivity, at the bottom of this for us as faculty members, it is about building resilience for students as they begin engaging their learning on online learning, which is new to them, and being able to empathize with the kind of circumstances within which they find themselves. So let me now share the framework that I am going to use to analyze these experiences. It is actually twofold in the sense that I'm going to be looking at the framework to analyze experiences in terms of student attendance on their online classes. And this attendance is about, did they actually log in for the session or log in on Moodle? Did they have connectivity issues? Did they have reported IT problems or that made them not attend? Or did they have issues with their devices? The other issue that I'm going to use is participation. So participation here is a higher level than attendance. It is about actual involvement in activities that are going on online. So, participates in Zoom sessions either through chat, through asking questions, making presentations, and having responses. And on Moodle, the kind of measure that we are using is that for us to accept that a student has participated, they must engage in at least 80% of the tasks on Moodle that were given in a particular course. There is also the issue of skills. Are students able to navigate comfortably around Zoom? And are they able to have independent learning skills? Finally, we shall look at outcomes in terms of course assessments. What are the students scoring when it comes to this online teaching? And to what extent are they accomplishing tasks that they have been given, either on Zoom or on Moodle? These four aspects I'm going to use to analyze experiences that will be found within particular contexts that research and experience have informed me that are useful when it comes to online learning and have make significant differences. And these include the country where a student is, the gender of the student, age, the faculty teaching, course performance, and workplace experience that they have had before coming. So generally, this is what will help me analyze experiences that I'm going to share with you. Just in terms of the sample, our students, while we are located in Dar es Salaam, our students come from across East Africa, the wider East Africa of Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And they are 58 in number. I thought I should put that picture there so that you can actually see some of our work in action. And in some cases, we actually have classes of up to 58. So now let me begin sharing our experiences. And I will start with country level context. So like I said, we have analyzed students' participation on our online classes using three particular modes. And that is, we look at their attendance, their participation, and their learning based on the framework that I have already shared. So when we look and compare across the three countries where our students come from, interesting enough, we find that while on average, all the students are actually doing okay and they're well over 75% in terms of performance, we see that Kenyan students actually have a higher, not just attendance, but also participation and learning. So what we make out of this is it's probably not necessarily about motivation at student level, but this particular difference is more about connectivity, whereby we find, for example, students in Uganda, regardless of the location where they are, and I know I have their colleagues here in Uganda and they can comment on that, they seem to have more connectivity challenges compared with other students. And so the implication of this for us here in IED is when we are dealing with students from these three countries, it is important for us to try and think through what are the countries they are coming from and what are the specific challenges they are having and how can we support them rather than assume a homogeneous approach in our teaching. Another experience that I have explored is about the gender of the students, and I found out how do females differ from males in terms of participation. And interestingly, I found that statistically, actually there's a lot of statistics behind this, but I've simplified it in terms of percentage. In terms of attendance and participation, there is no significant difference between female and male. However, when it comes to the actual outcomes of learning, that means assessment outcomes, formal assessment outcomes, when it comes to completion of tasks that have been given on Moodle, we find that the females are actually scoring a little, significantly less than the males. And this made us to start thinking, what is it that is happening to the ladies in our class? And we thought that probably this has to do with cultural issues, because actually up to 90% of our participants who are female are actually married, which suggests that they have got roles that women have to play in East Africa. And these roles are attached to culture, and probably that pressure is what acts as a barrier for them to engage as much as the males when it comes to tasks that are given and when it comes to the outcomes of their assessment. The next level that we actually have analyzed is about the age. Does age matter when it comes to online learning? And here we find that, interestingly, our students who are between 29 to 40 years actually have a much higher engagement level compared to any other age group that we have. And this is actually significantly higher than all the other age groups. But when we compare between 41 to 50 and above years, statistically, this is not significant. There might be differences, as you can see there, in percentages, but statistically it's not significant. The only significant difference here is that those from 29 to 40 have a significant online presence than their colleagues. This then suggests that age actually does matter. It is not just like a number like we normally think. And therefore, in our teaching, we need to think through who are the students we are dealing with and what is the age level. I'm sure we all have heard about technology, migrants, immigrants, etc. And maybe this is what is coming to play, because the people who are around 29 to 40 years are actually people who were born in an era when technology began having a systematic presence in our context here. The next level that I looked at is faculty online training. We asked ourselves the question, does it matter who is teaching? And so we compared 7 of our faculty, 4 of whom had undergone AKUBL training before, pre-COVID, and those who had not. And these were relatively new faculty who had come, because all our faculty had actually gone through this process. And actually, while, again, this may not be statistically different, we see that those of us who had undergone AKU blended learning, in terms of student attendance in their classes, in terms of student participation, and in terms of overall learning of these students, there was a difference. And this was especially in terms of participation. That is the red bar, as you can see. That was the major one. And when you look deeper, you get to find that those who had undergone blended learning had actually experienced or been oriented to a wider variety of pedagogical strategies that they were putting in place. And hence the difference, especially in terms of participation. So we come up with the implication that actually training of faculty for online learning does matter, and it is important because it does affect how they are able to be inclusive in their online learning for our students. The next one that we looked at is, well, what about the online pedagogy? We zeroed down on both synchronous and asynchronous. And this was an interesting analysis, because here we found that, starting with the synchronous one, the peer-to-peer, this is when Moodle is open, faculty have not yet arrived, and the students are engaging within themselves on no specific directive of the faculty member. And actually, from the recordings, when you listen, there was a significant amount of discussion about the course, and you find that there was vibrancy there, and about 87% of the students were actually engaging by discussing with each other, using their own language rather than the formal language that they use when the faculty member is there. So that was pretty interesting. When it comes to the lecture, we found that about 86% of the students consistently attended lectures. In terms of the chat box on Zoom, about 67%. If you look across the 4 courses that we have analyzed, 67% of the students actually at one time or another did post a chat in the chat box. Breakout rooms also proved to be very, in terms of participation, to put, for lack of a better word, pressure on the students to participate, because this was a smaller number and their colleagues did expect them to contribute. And so this actually turns out to be an interesting or a good way of actually engaging students in smaller groups, and it proved to be very useful. Q&A is basically questions that are asked over Zoom. About 43% of the students get engaged in that. To note here is basically across courses, you find that similar students are the ones who consistently answer the questions and ask questions, which was something interesting. In terms of asynchronous, the significant thing to note here is that 97% of the students got engaged in tasks that had assigned marks, which means tasks that had an effect on their GPA. 76% of them got engaged when the tasks were collaborative. So again, peer pressure and motivation to work with colleagues was an issue. Same as discussion forums, about 74% actually did participate. When it comes to media, and this has been touted a lot as being a major motivation for learning, but we found only 68% actually watched videos that were posted. Articles put up to read. This was surprising because this seems to be the major way in which postgraduate is taught, but only 30% actually bothered to read those. So what does this mean for us? First of all, synchronous, the difference between synchronous engagement and asynchronous, as far as IED is concerned, in the little experience they have had, is very similar, 70% and 69%. However, we now know that when you engage students in tasks that have been assigned mark, that is when you get the highest engagement. Collaborative tasks also get the highest engagement, whether they are formal or informal. And these findings should therefore in future inform our pedagogy of online activities. Then we went ahead and looked at courses, and I just want to focus on two things. We've got electives and we have got core courses. Electives are courses that have fewer students, and students choose them based on their interests. They have choice. And as you can see, when it comes to online learning, and this is very similar also to the face-to-face, we see that the marks across all the electives are much higher, significantly higher than those on core courses. However, something interesting comes up. So yes, class size does matter when it comes to engagement, because core courses, we have got up to 60 students attending. In electives, we have got between 6 students and 18 students per course. And hence, the reason why we're saying that class size does matter. If you look at the attendance, which is the blue bar, you find that it is consistently high. But if you look at the participation, which is the red bar, you again find it is consistently lower than the attendance. So this suggests there are some students who are logging in to our online classes, but are not actually taking time to participate effectively in the tasks that have been given. And therefore, attendance shouldn't be taken for granted to lead to learning, but that is just but a beginning. So then we looked at workplace contexts. Our students are divided from primary, secondary, tertiary. And what we found is that really secondary level students, for a reason or another, when it comes to attendance, when it comes to participation, learning, and even the skills, they have got actually a higher level compared to primary and tertiary. Our thinking is that probably this is because in secondary schools there has been a lot more focus on ICT integration across East Africa than has been at primary and even for tertiary level, which includes tutors, ministry officials. Their level of participation was not as high as that of secondary teachers. Remember, these are tentative findings, and this is still work in progress. We also have special needs, and in special needs, what we have done is we have acquired what we call a voice-to-text software, because we have some students who are hard of hearing or deaf, and therefore when it comes to Zoom, they are unable to engage as much as we would like them to engage. And so we actually got a software. When you speak, it actually types. I would have liked to share that with you, but maybe if time permits, next time I will. So really, what do we learn from this? We learned that inclusion, which includes student engagement, is a function of multiple student identities, their gender, their geographical location, where they work, and therefore there is need for differentiated online pedagogy to recognize this. Effectiveness of online learning is determined at the micro level, that is by the individual, macro level, but the institutional level, that means the faculty and their training, meso level, which is by the country you're coming from and how much investment they have made in technological infrastructure. Finally, to ensure the quality in online learning, we must seek to understand the different contexts in which it is situated. Thank you very much.